2v8 is back for 2 weeks, and I'm pretty excited about it. The first time it came out, it was a little rough around the edges with easy slugging, flashlights being worthless, the lack of killer roster and maps making matches feel the same, guide and scout being way too good to not run, and pallets drying up fast. And other small things excluding the obvious long wait for killer. So here's a short video about the changes from the original and the new content to see if 2v8 2 Electric Boogaloo is better than the first. The changes in this update are quite plentiful, and so I will be splitting them into 3 sections: General, Killer, and Survivor. General changes is the killer now has to lift the survivor up as they're automatically sent to the cage. This was to mainly give flashlights purpose, since the only way to get saves was to use lockers, and the timing was way harder. The 2 other changes is with the cages, they are no longer move when the killer is near, if there's a survivor close, and the unhook is 15% faster. This was to prevent the cage from just moving before you could save, which happened a few times, which I think is a good change. Generator's got a massive change, now feeling like a tug-of-war system. For every gen completed, generators go slower by 5%, but for every cage state, gens get 2.5% faster, making 2 cage states equivalent to 1 gen. This was mostly to stop the one-sided matches from occurring, which was very common when the game mode first came out. But it's funny to think that imagine having to do a gen 35% slower because the killers can't get a hook for their lives, and vice versa with the possibility of doing gens 57.5% faster. Still slower than Soul Survivor though, but I like this change. It stops matches from finishing too fast, and tries to at least make it feel less one-sided. But of course, if there's a skill difference too massive, there's no saving that. The killer system has almost been completely reworked, making classes like survivors having a specific team skill for each killer. They give extra bonuses and cooldowns, but I'll talk about more in the new content section. However, what returned was the nowhere to hide on kick. When a friend starts a chase, when you're 60 meters away, you see the survivor's aura, and when a gen is completed, people with no cage states are revealed to the killers. It's quite basic, but trust me, the killer classes are pretty crazy. Each killer got small tweaks. Nerf sadly lost the Scream on Blink, no 200 extra blood points, it's so over guys. Trapper got a small haste buff, and now your teammates can see traps. I think this is a great idea since they can now push the chasers into the traps. Hillbilly oiled up his chainsaw and got a new chain because he can insta-down survivors again with a small cost of his turn rate bonus being reduced. Huntress loses her 20% Hatch's cooldown reduction, and Wraith, my lovely boy, got Purple Shadow Dance added to his base kit. We're so goddamn back. There's nothing to talk about with survivors. Survivor classes are mostly the same except for having new abilities and unlockable abilities, but I'll talk that more in the new content section. Overall, good changes. I'm mostly focused on the changes to the general content in the mode, because one of the biggest problems I had in 2v8 was just how pointless items were, mainly flashlights, how fast generators could be done. However, they didn't focus on fixing that pallets disappear fast, slugging being common, and things like that. Thankfully, they did, and it's a part of the new content section, so I think it's the perfect time to start talking about that. On top of having new killers and maps, we've got a brand new class and a refresher of the class-based system. But did they finally make all 4 survivors feel equally balanced? Let's see. Survivor classes were changed, removing the self-care on final cage state for abilities you can activate. But if you are slugged, you can consume your abilities charge to get yourself up. But they didn't add endurance for some reason. I've watched my friend get slugged twice with 0 counterplay due to this simple oversight by behavior. And an unlockable class ability which is usually quite strong. Other than that, it's the same 4 classes like last time, just a little tweaked. Chaser is the one that got the biggest nerf. 50% speed boost compared to last time's 150. You still have 16 meters windows of opportunity, but this class gets silent rust actions for 8 seconds and then goes on a 30-second cooldown as their active ability, with its unlockable skill being self-care. This class took the biggest hit out of the 4, but it still has its value for people confident in their chasing skills. Guide is honestly kinda too strong in comparison to the others. 4-man stacks of this class is very common. You get shown gen auras having the crazy ability of giving anyone 8% gen repair bonus for 10 seconds. And keep in mind, unlike the team skills paltry 3% to an 8 meter, near them, the 8% can be activated and you can just leave the free man. They do 24% gens faster now, thanks to you. Of course, it's a 90-second cooldown to make it fair, but it's still not even that fair. Its unlockable skill is insane. If you're teaming with other gen jockeys, 5% repair charge added to the next gen you touch. Add that for the 4 other guides doing the gen with you, that next gen's already 80% complete. It's likely never going to happen in a serious match. Conceptually, it's really goofy. Medic is back, and it heard us talking smack, so it locked the fuck in. On top of it having a 128% aura reading on injured survivors, their team skill is bonkers. For the small price of waiting 2 minutes, people in a 8-meter radius gain 50% of their health instantly, which means you can heal mid-chase if you have working with another medic, which is pretty funny if you can actually pull it off. This class comms is crazy. Its final unlockable skill just removes the scratch marks, which if the killer is blind like me, gets you 3 escapes and then you can rat. And the final class, Scout. Like Chase, it's a little weaker. You get 6-second alert of the killer performing break actions, which is nice tracking. You get the funny urban evasion perk again, but its team skill lets you say it's Lego Star Wars time and gets you repair and reset pallets after 3 seconds in an 8-meter radius. Its unlockable skill is also really nice, being a mix of Fixated and Iron Will. No more telling the survivors where the killer is, sadly, but it was pretty OP effect, so I think that's fair. Besides Guide, I think that all the classes are quite well balanced. You can do some crazy plays with Medic, but it requires 2 other medics to be together to really do it, so it's balanced around the fact that if you add endurance on getting yourself up, I think the survivor experience will be way better. Killers have been changed too, adding classes. I'm going to talk more about them in the special section, but I'm going to give this a basic recap. You get only 1 of each class. Brute is the generous class, focusing on breaking things quicker, giving your teammates speed if they're near you when you break something, increasing the auto reading range by 8 meters on breaking generators. Enforcer is an M1 focus class, giving your teammates 60% lunge when you work together to eliminate a survivor. Your friend gets the first hit, and then you get the second hit as they're marked, and then they get 60% longer range. And its aura effect is just longer nowhere to hide. Fearmonger is for the solo killers who don't need their friends, rewarding your ally speed when you hunt outside of a 16-meter radius. It's a very interesting one, having an aura reading ability for unhooked survivors, but it's only really good on killers who can work without a teammate, like Hillbilly or Nurse. Trapper really won't get too much value out of it. And Shadow, the stealth class. It masks your terror radius, and on hit near your friend transfers it to them. It's not the craziest, but I've been getting some value of its aura effect on Huntress to pretend that I can cross map. But that's the basics of the classes. Let's talk about the killers. Blight, Spirit, and Death Slinger have been added. All 3 have some touch-ups to their abilities. Blight can bounce off of his teammates. This is both a blessing and a curse, since your ally can just block you from supporting them, which is a little annoying. Spirit, for once, I'm actually enjoying playing in this game mode. She has a lot of value and is really scary with Wraith, a hit-and-run killer, and she can be like a hyena, killing off the injured prey, but doesn't escape the fact that I suck with her. And finally, the Death Slinger, who until very recently was broken and was not that fun to play. What I assume was a programming missite made it so if your teammate hit any survivor, instead of the chained one, the chain would just break. Even worse, the survivor isn't even injured, so you just lose in general. It was kinda lame, but now that he's fixed, he's fun as ever. I'm not the best with him, but I can still enjoy pretending that I'm playing. I like these 3 killers. It adds more variety. You have 2 spectral beings being Wraith and Spirit, 2 range killers being Death Slinger and Huntress, and we rush killers have no limits. But that's all for the newly added content. But I can say with this addition of 2v8, class stacking is becoming more and more of a glaring issue that should be addressed on the 3rd run of it. Simple change, free of max of each class, so that teams have to run at least 3 different classes than just stacking on medic and guide. However, before we finish this video, killers now have classes, which means I now finally have an excuse to make a section on Wraith in 2v8, let's go. Normally with updates, I do it with new perks that come out with killers, but this class-based system works like that, so I'm gonna make a tier on which ones are the best for Wraith and the best synergy to have, so let's get started. The worst class for Wraith, in my opinion, is obviously the Shadow, but not by much. The ability does have its use, mainly the secondary on-hit effect, giving your teammate a undetectable effect. On a somewhat silent killer like Deathslinger or a Trapper is helpful. It's a support-oriented perk that helps that 32 meters is a large distance, but you're better off with your teammate running it rather than Wraith. It doesn't help that the 4 extra seconds on reveal feels counterintuitive, since the class works on support your teammate, but the aura leaves within the 16-meter radius, making it just 4 pointless seconds. This class was made for Sniper Huntress or Deathslinger / Trapper, not an already undetectable killer, so it's not a shock. Fearmonger is a really cool team skill, one of the more aggressive Wraith players, rewarding stealth and giving your friend bounties when you're solo killing. If you're on comms, I think it's one of the better ones, but it has the downside of having the worst aura skill of the 4. Having 4 extra seconds of aura reading on uncaged survivors is nice, but from the few games I've ran, you usually get each survivor hooked after the 3rd or 4th gen is complete. So it's very little value, unlike the other 2 classes that have value throughout the entire match. It was a tough one to decide, but the second best class is Brute. It's the best general class, especially if your teammate is someone like Deathslinger, Trapper, or Spirit, mainly an M1 focus killer. Wraith in this game mode is a support killer. They have great mobility, able to pressure generators easily, and with Shadow Dance do 60% faster actions already. Adding 25% on top of that is amazing, but there's a reason why I don't think it's so amazing, and that is other killers can run it. For the most part, every killer isn't going to run Fearmonger or Enforcer. The first one due to the fact of having no way to hide their terror radius, and the other being it's M1 focused, so they would want to run Brute or Shadow. And Brute being the best generous class, you can't blame them for gravitating towards it, which is why Enforcer is the best class, as long as your teammate isn't Huntress or Billy. This class puts the concept of Wraith being a support to the extreme. When your teammate hits a survivor within 32 meters, they're marked for 12 seconds. Downing a survivor marked gives your teammate 60% longer lunge for 15 seconds, which can decimate unsuspecting survivors. On top of the chasing set injured survivors, you get 3% haste boosts, which from what we know from Made for This, can make a difference. The added ability of longer aura rating on kick gens is just icing on the cake. This is the best synergy with Spirit, because her attack is an M1, and the idea of having 15 seconds of 60% extra post-phase lunge is scary, to be honest. But overall, 2v8 is a funny, goofy, and wacky game mode. This is me just putting my opinion on my favorite killer in Dead by Daylight and how I play him. Run him and any other killer how you'd want. If someone tells you that you can't, they're cringe, easy as that. Now let's wrap this up. Overall, 2v8 is 2v8. Survivors queues are quick, killers take 20 minutes, and normal queue is basically fucked for the next 2 weeks. But there's being more variety in maps and killers, I don't think it will lose its luster it had, unless like last time they made it almost an entire goddamn month, making it honestly overstay its welcome. But with that, thank you for watching this video. I didn't really think I'd make a video on 2v8 again, but here we are. I'll be honest, it was because of the Dokkan battle joke I did. However, before I say the usual spiel YouTubers do, I wanted to say that I'm really excited for the next chapter. The new Survivor and Killer have interesting perks, and the Houndmaster looks really fun to play, so I can't wait for November 28th to come. And if you want to hear me yap on about it, why not like and subscribe? And of course, have a wonderful day.